Hey guys, David here, Texas Horns football, talking about TCU 37, Texas 27, third loss of the season, second loss in Big 12 conference. So this one, I think overall, mostly goes to the offense. Let me know what you think about it. Give me your kind of high level thoughts and then any specific issues that you see. Give the video a thumbs up, share it out, and definitely drop your comments below. Always love hearing from you guys. So the reason I say mostly the offense, the 4 turnovers are the most obvious, but I think just like the 2 big turnovers against the Kansas game, these 4 turnovers just continue to put the defense in a bad spot. And this is not a defense that can continuously be put in bad situations. And that, and also the offense's inability to get into the end zone in the red zone, right? I think there was a time there where they were just 1-4. Cameron Dicker missed a 26-yard field goal. And I think the story of this team right now is we're seeing a team that just can't put it all together, right? The individual pieces are impressive, but the sum of those pieces and the result just isn't there. And like I said last week after the Kansas game, this is a team that just looks like it's cracking and losing pieces and starting to kind of crumble. Yes, injuries have been a major issue on defense, absolutely, but at some point you've got to put something together as a complete team that can overcome that. It's hard to keep up with the names on defense that are injured. I mean, it's been Stearns, Foster, Overshone, Jalen Green, Jeffrey McCulloch now, Chris Brown. Just crazy, crazy stuff. Overall, I think the defense started out well, and just like they did against Kansas, just started to kind of come apart. And I think we've seen this pattern now several times, even kind of against LSU and against Oklahoma, where this defense just wears down. This defense just crumbles apart late in the game. But I don't think the story of this game is really the fault of the defense. This was an offense that stalled, an offense that couldn't convert, and an offense that is just asking Sam to do way too much. Totaled up his passes. He's passed the ball 92 times in the last 2 games. We don't want to see Sam passing the ball 92 times. That's ridiculous. Okay? Sam's not the type of quarterback that should be passing the ball 92 times. Rashawn Johnson was kind of absent in the game. I think he only had about 4 carries. Keontae Ingram had a pretty good game. That he had a lot of runs that were just stalling. But I think what we've seen too from the offensive line is their run blocking effectiveness is starting to dwindle and regress. And I think we're seeing, the results of that. And, I really put this one mostly on the shoulders of the offense. There was no Brennan Eagles, which was a really weird situation. Basically saying that he had some personal issues throughout the week that caused him to miss some practice, which, okay, whatever. But he was on the sidelines, suited up. That was kind of weird to see. That whole situation I thought was handled really weird. Jake Smith, just think he continues to show his lack of experience. Had a really bad route run on one of Sam's interceptions, and maybe that's not all Jake Smith's fault, but he kind of got pressed at the line, rounded out his route really, really weird on that interception. We did see Sam press the ball way too many times. He, from the Oklahoma game, has just looked really tight. I thought Sam definitely looked better against Kansas, looked more confident against Kansas, but he just seems really tight. This whole team seems like they're playing tight and not loose and fun. This is absolutely not the attitude or personality that we saw in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. That team was lit up. That team was on fire, and that team was out to just punch somebody in the mouth. And that's not what we're seeing right now. So something's weird, something's wrong, and it happens. That's why it's hard, man. It's hard to create that continuity, but no excuse. You got to beat TCU. You've got to. TCU's defense is really good. That they are, but you just got to overcome that. So I've been reading a lot of comments since Saturday, in some of these Facebook groups and on some of the comments and other videos, and really just blows my mind how some fans, after one game like that, all of a sudden just start talking about firing people, and as if that is the well thought out answer. To me, that's just a lazy comment that shows either a lack of knowledge of football or just a lack of willingness to actually sit down and look at things. Now, obviously it can't just continue and continue and continue. I think it's a great debate on the style of defense that Todd Orlando is still, throwing out there, pretty much with 3 down linemen and sometimes 8 defensive backs. Now, I will say this. I do think the core D-line, especially Coburn and Malcolm Roach, had one of the best games of the year from that line of scrimmage. So that was cool to see at least. But, with this defensive scheme, we just so many times see these defensive backs, blitzing or you're trying to bring your pressure from the guys who are furthest away from the ball, who are furthest away from the line of scrimmage. And these guys look like they're blitzing from row 50 into the stands, and it takes them forever to get there. And the result is that they're just running themselves out of the play. And essentially the defense has 10 guys instead of 11. And it's just a weird thing to see. I think, even with the depth of the defensive backs, yes, they're young. Yes, we saw a lot of Tyler Owens, true freshman Tyler Owens at safety. And these guys have speed. And a lot of times, even when they are right there with their receiver, they just never play the ball. It's like they forget that it's not just we're not running track, okay? There's a ball in the air, and that ball is the point of the game, and you have every right to that ball as the receiver does, but they don't get their head around, they don't play the ball, and it's just a really weird thing to see, and it just makes you wonder, what are they taught from a technique standpoint? Do they just forget? What did they do in high school? In high school, did they just run with their receiver and, the quarterback never threw the ball to him? I don't know, but it's just, there's not a lot of ball battling going on with these defensive backs. And yes, a lot of times they are caught, out of position. But that's just really weird to see. But I don't put this game on the shoulders of the defense. 4 turnovers is just that's tough for a good defense to overcome. And this defense, especially right now with the injuries, you can't ask this defense to overcome 4 turnovers and lack of touchdowns in the red zone. So that's kind of what I see from an overall defensive scheme and technique standpoint. It doesn't help that senior Jeffrey McCulloch, linebacker, wasn't out there. Just from a leadership standpoint, I think about the only consistency I think we've seen from the defense is Brandon Jones and Joseph Asai. And I think Brandon Jones has been asked to do so much, just like Sam has been asked to do way much. Sometimes it seems like these guys are trying to overcome the lack of coaching, from an offensive and defensive standpoint. And even looking at the offensive play calling just seems to be predictable, pretty vanilla, and not nearly as crisp as what this offense was doing early in the season. Even especially against LSU, for the most part, the offense was running, was running pretty crisp. But Sam obviously had his worst game of the season. He now has 7 interceptions, 5 in the last 2 games, but 7 interceptions, 2 more than he had last year, and already matching his interception total from his freshman season. So, 4 games left. Where does this thing go from here from a schedule standpoint, from where things are? Obviously, Oklahoma and Baylor now have a good control of the Big 12. However, Oklahoma gave up 48 in a loss to Kansas State, so they now have a loss. Baylor still has their tough part of the schedule coming up. They've got to play Oklahoma, Texas. I believe they still have to play Kansas State. But what Texas is looking at is a bye week coming up. I think a great time for a bye week, second bye week. And then Kansas State, Iowa State comes into Austin. We go to Waco, and then Texas Tech comes into Austin. So definitely not an easy road. And this team, where it is right now, could win all 4 as easily as they could lose all 4. And I think where the momentum is going, obviously, is to the loss column. But looking at what Kansas State did to Oklahoma, they beat Oklahoma in a very Kansas State-like way, even though they scored more points than I thought they would. But Kansas State has always been one of those fundamentally sound, always well-coached, well-prepared teams that's good enough to beat you. And, the way this Texas team is playing is they have to overcome themselves before they can overcome the opponent. So it's really tough to see them winning all 4. Absolutely. I still think Baylor has a little bit of fool's gold, but with 2 conference losses, now you're going to have to hope to win out, and you're going to have to hope that Baylor loses an additional game, which they very likely will. They've had a pretty easy road so far, and have had some tight wins, but they're undefeated. So absolutely credit Baylor. So just to get into the conference championship game, Texas is going to have to win out and then get one more loss from Baylor. So, as of right now, the conference championship game is Baylor and Oklahoma. So we'll see. But let me know what your thoughts are below, guys. What is the main issue that you see? What was the main issue that you saw from a TCU game? I still see a lot of people calling out the defense, and yes, the defense was bad toward the end, but to me, this game is all about the offensive turnovers, the lack of the ability of the offense to maintain momentum and not get into the end zone in the red zone. But credit TCU's defense. They are a good defense, absolutely. But I do think this offense absolutely should have scored at least in the mid-30s. And then, yes, you've got to ask your defense to keep the other team, at least in the low 30s. So that's kind of what I was expecting going in. Definitely needed more points than 27 points, but the turnovers will do that to you. So, guys, I appreciate it always. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook. There is a link in the description. Texas Horns football. We have over 55,000 Longhorns fans on there now. So would love for you to join us, join the conversation on there, and we will see you on the next video. Hook 'em.